context about
Sorry.
about trauma and the impact of trauma. When I'm not working in schools, I am a yoga teacher at various correctional facilities across California, where I teach a meditation, mindfulness, and movement class to currently incarcerated men, primarily at this moment, and juveniles. And I'm also a, those
Sorry.
aren't my kids. I'm also
I'm having a
I'm
hard time
proud,
over here.
I'm a proud foster parent. I've had two foster teens in my care. And so I've been doing that for a handful. So I kind of eat, live, and breathe trauma all around me. All right, Megan. These are again, these are not my children, but Megan
Sorry.
can talk about her cute kids.
I hit the arrow button and apparently it changes the slides and I did not realize that. So I apologize. Like I said, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been providing therapy for over 12 years now. I have done therapy with children, adolescents, adults in various settings. I've done career counseling. I've done substance abuse counseling. Really, my niche is working with kids and teens. I've also have experience providing ABA services. So what Julie is her specialty. I've done that as well. I'm currently at Dartmouth as their mental health therapist. And right now I'm providing individual therapeutic services to the students on campus. I have knowledge in experience in treating anxiety, depression, relationship issues, facilitating healthy communication, supporting academic success. And I use a lot of different treatment modalities. Usually cognitive behavioral therapy is one of my go-to, but whatever modality is appropriate. And I am a proud mommy to two adorable little kids. My daughter Coraline is 4, and then my son Holden is 18 months. And I understand the struggles of being a parent during a pandemic and also having to work full time. It's not easy. And one of the things I hope you take away is it's really okay to not be okay during this time. So we are going to dive right in and get started. Okay, see now I don't know what I'm doing. There you go. Why is mental health important to focus on? Basically what's happened is the structure of life, how our children have been exposed to completely changed overnight. They went from being able to go to school to playing with their friends to being in classrooms where they're interacting with their peers and their teachers and able to participate in so many various activities to what we see on the picture on the right hand of the screen of these isolated learning areas, which is completely not how school is supposed to be. But that is what we have right now. We have had a lot of success with the learning centers, the distance learning cohorts that we have. And we have thankfully been able to get kids our TK through second grade back this week. And it's just a joy to see kids on campus again and see them smiling. I am also a parent in the district. I live by Leeds. And so it was fascinating to watch our students run back to school. And the parents I talked with were like, they ran to school and didn't even look back. Like I thought they would be crying and upset. And they were like, no, they got to go. Like they were ready to be back at school. So that's exciting for us. So the impact of COVID-19, we are all in an extremely stressful period of time right now. We're facing lots of different crises. Maybe not all of them are being experienced at the same time. Some of us have more than others, and some of us have every single one. A lot of our families are going through some kind of economic or financial hardship. There's been a lot of instability in our living arrangements. We're having to move, or we have families who are moving from basically house to house because the housing has gotten too expensive and they lost their job. Managing our own grief, our own sense of loss, both for parents and for kids. We have the impact of systemic racism that's been prevalent going on in our communities and in the world right now. We experience a shortage of essential supplies. One of the things I think our kids are going to remember the most about this is remember the time we couldn't go to the store to get toilet paper and everyone was hoarding that toilet paper. I mean, that's the reality. The bigger things we're facing with the social isolation, fear of going back to school, going out in the community, being around people who may cough next to you or sneeze next to you and think that you're going to get COVID and you're going to get sick and die. Also, the loss of family members or people that we may know who have had COVID or may have had other pre-existing conditions and then gotten COVID and then passed away. The political climate we all experienced in January. And then we also have social media and those impacts. So we have a lot of different crises happening at the same time. And we are now looking at, as adults, we're able to manage a lot of this stuff, but we're putting all of this now onto our kids. And they're reacting in ways that are perfectly normal for the situation. All right, Julie.
So how might this feel for all of us and our kids? There might be feelings of anxiety, fear, self-doubt, depression, mad, exhausted, both physically and emotionally, overwhelmed, checked out, and more. I mean, I was just talking to a parent the other day that I'm trying to find a way to get their child to come onto campus, even if it's just like one day a week, because there were some challenges with transportation, just different things like that. A lot of the stuff that Megan just kind of talked about on the other slide. And the parent was just like, I just want my kid out of the house for 45 minutes. Can you give me 45 minutes? And it was like, yeah, girl, I'll give you 45 minutes. She's like, I just want to shave my legs. And I was like, whatever you need, like, we're here to help you with whatever you need. And like, that just stuck with me. And it was so real because it was like, we are in as parents and as caregivers and as all of that good stuff, we are parenting. We are the short order cooks during lunch and breakfast. We are the one-on-one aides. We are the teacher. We are arts. We are physical education. We're kind of doing all of it. We're in all of the hats, right? And so all of these feelings, I think all of us can relate to that have either happened all at once. Like for me, I feel like 9 of these on a daily occurrence sometimes. Or, you know, we have kind of explored the depths of one or more of these. And we're all feeling the effects of what's going on around us.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Oh, I did it. There you go. So one of my favorite analogies, and I'm so grateful that Julie had this slide already prepared, is the most important thing of anything right now as a parent, caregiver, whatever role is you have to take care of yourself first. I learned this lesson when I was going through my graduate program. One of my professors had said it, you have to put on your own oxygen mask first in order to help other people. And that always resonates with me. And every time I'm on an airplane, I always like laugh to myself. I'm like, oh, I use this analogy at work all the time. But it's so true, because if we can't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of other people. And we have to be willing and able to accept that we can't do everything on our own. And it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay for us to be like, you know what? You did 2 hours of a Zoom today. We're done. We're not doing any more. Like, let's focus on being kids. Let's focus on eating together as a family. Let's focus on playing outside, whatever it is, to take care of ourselves. And that goes for parents too. Like what Julie was saying with the mom wanting to shave her legs. You know, it's okay if you want to just lock yourself in the bathroom for 10 minutes just to breathe and calm yourself down, so we aren't reacting out of a place of emotion. We're reacting out of a place of calmness.
So this bleeds really nicely into, so it wouldn't be a presentation that I'm a part of without finding a way to finagle meditation or mindfulness into it in some way. And so just something to kind of think about when we're talking about taking care of ourselves, thinking about how can we have self-compassion towards ourselves? How can we have mindfulness towards, you know, in our day, and overall acceptance about the challenges that we're all being faced with, and about having your own oxygen mask on first, thinking about over the course of your day, how much time are you in the here and now versus what we call time traveling, worrying about the future, ruminating about the past. How often are you checking in with yourself? And how am I doing? What do I need right now? Individuals who are caregivers in any capacity, we oftentimes put others' needs in front of our own, which is an incredibly selfless and altruistic way of living. But it does wear you down. And so, checking in with yourself, noticing when you're thinking about something that happened in the past or worrying about something that might be coming up in the future, and bringing awareness to those simple acts throughout the day. And practicing just a little bit of gratitude in those moments can go a really long way for our mental health and our self-compassion and our well-being. That cup of coffee you have in the morning, maybe you wake up an extra 10 minutes early and you have complete silence in your home, or maybe you like a lot of noise, whatever you like, and you have that cup of coffee or you have that cup of tea. I know for me, like, I need to lay in my bed for a period of like 10 minutes uninterrupted. And like my husband will wake up, he will go and do his thing, and like I'll be awake, but I like need to be in my bed with my blanket all by myself doing like starfishing and, like snow angels in my bed, because I just love that moment of quietness and that softness. And I have so much gratitude in that moment for it. Having that little quiet time before you go to sleep. And these are all things, there are these moments that all of us have in our day, but we often are on autopilot and we're not bringing that awareness to it. We're just kind of cruising right through. And I want to invite each of you, that's part of putting that oxygen mask on yourself first. These little moments throughout the day that you can catch yourself, that you can check in with yourself, that you can find that gratitude, can really make a difference in your mental health. I think there's one more about mindfulness as well. And Megan said this in the very beginning. It's okay to not be okay. Give yourself permission to have a bad day, a bad week, a bad 9 months. This is a struggle for all of us. And I think oftentimes when these negative emotions come up, we want to push them away. We push them down into our, right? Like we push it away. We don't want to deal with it. Or we acknowledge it's happening. We're like, it's fine. I don't need to deal with it right now. And instead of pushing them away, finding that acceptance and, hey, this is really crappy right now. This stinks. This is really hard. Or, man, I'm feeling whatever. I'm feeling anxious. Coming into contact with those feelings, acknowledging those feelings, and most importantly, accepting and being okay with those feelings is the greatest gift you can give to yourself, instead of feeling like you need to be 100% for everybody else. Because just like I say, with every single one of the students I work with, if they don't show up 100%, we can't expect 100% out of them. So as parents, if we're not 100%, we're not going to be able to be 100% to our kids. And maybe 100% is even what we should be striving for. Maybe 80%, 70%, whatever that percentage is meaningful for you and manageable for you. Try and find ways to take care of yourself, because other people deserve the best part of you, including you. So thank you for coming to my mindfulness talk. I wish I could talk about this for an hour and 15 minutes, but we don't have the time.
It's interesting because when you were talking, it made me think about when was the last time I wasn't okay. And I can tell you the exact date I wasn't okay. And it was in January. And I had this exact moment. I was just not, my kids were sent home from daycare because they had a potential exposure to COVID. And I was at home with my husband and my 2 kids, and we were both working full time. And it came to a point where I was like, I can't do this. Like, I need a break. I need to be present for my kids. So I took some time off from work. I was able to do that so graciously, and grateful for that ability. But I didn't want to do that, because then I feel like I abandoned my job. But I needed to do what was right for me in the moment. The only thing that was going to make me feel better was taking care of my own family. So you have to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. All right. So next topic we're moving on to is trauma and its impact. And we're going to cover how trauma affects our brain, which is also one of Julie's favorite subjects, our behavior, and how we can help our children, which is one of my favorite subjects.
Science time. All right. So your brain is like a fist. And if you think about it as a fist and you put it down this way, I'm going to talk about the brain using this. And then it kind of mocks exactly what's on your screen, but it helps me to have like a little bit of a visual for myself. So this part of your brain right here, the front, your prefrontal lobe, is responsible for all of your executive functioning. This is your reasoning, your critical thinking, your problem solving, your perspective taking, all of these different things. A little bit behind that, say like right around here, you got your emotional state, which is, am I loved? How, like, emotions that I am feeling, which can also be anger, which can also be sadness. It can be all of these different emotions, right? And then we have our brain stem. This is the most powerful part of our brain, and it's what leads directly to your spine, right? And so your brain stem right here is called your, am I safe? And is responsible for survival. So if you think about these three parts of your brain and keep them in mind when we're talking about trauma, trauma is an experience in which a powerful or dangerous event occurs and overwhelms our entire ability to cope. When this happens, a stress response happens, and all of this in the front of our brain goes offline. It is bye-bye, right? And we are living only in this part of our brain, which is responsible for survival. So now trauma happens. We are unable to, a trauma is, occurs, or something that reminds us of a traumatic experience or whatever it might be occurs. This goes offline. And with that, all of our reasoning, rationale, emotional control, inhibitory control, ability to transition, even ability to perspective take, ability to calm down, ability to even access the part of our brain that says, okay, like just take a breath, because that's a skill, that's a coping skill. All of it goes offline. And the only thing that is happening is survival. Am I safe? And what safe looks like for somebody who's experienced trauma is very, very different. And we're going to talk about what does trauma look like, and what trauma might look like both emotionally and behaviorally. But when a traumatic event happens, the big takeaway is that no one is purposely doing anything. This is the brain's function, is to activate fight, flight, freeze. This all goes offline, and the only thing you can access is the part of your brain that's just trying to have you survive and stay safe. And if there is one thing you take away from this training, amongst other things, it is that this is a neurological, you can't stop it. It is a neurological thing that happens. And so when you kind of come to terms with that and you kind of accept that, and we give you some tools to utilize, it makes it seem less like a choice for that individual, or like, right, like something that they're choosing to do or that they're wanting to do. They don't even have the ability in that moment to make that choice, to do that thing. They just go to what they know how to survive, and what that might look like. And those are some behaviors that can be really challenging to navigate.
Well said.
It's like
I think you covered.
Yeah. So I think the
this.
big thing here is also that it's not the event itself that makes something traumatic, but the impact of the event and how our body and brain experiences it. And then there's also this thing called complex trauma, which is more than one traumatic event that occurs. And the more traumatic events, as we'll find out in a moment, that an individual occurs, the more adverse effects that has on an individual. And so we really just go back to that experience when we are triggered, of, we are immediately impacted, and everything around us in that moment, we are being brought back to that traumatic experience, right back to that day that schools closed. I never saw my friends again, right back to, a family member getting ill, or having to wear a mask all the time, or hearing all of this news about having to, wear a mask, and how many people have died in the United States or around the world, right? Like, those are triggering events for some of our kids. So when they hear something, or that feeling is evoked in them, they're going right back to that experience in that moment.
So as Julie was talking about, and we'll really share this area. So ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. They have been around for as long as we've been studying trauma. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, it's really been brought more to the forefront, and a lot more research and trainings are being done around childhood trauma and how it has long-standing effects on the brain. One of the interesting things about trauma is if you are exposed to an adverse childhood experience, which can be abuse, neglect, household challenges, domestic violence, sexual abuse, substance abuse, the more you are exposed to it, actually
Is that my
rewires.
computer that made Megan freeze, or is that her internet?
I think it might be you. Am I frozen?
You were.
Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Not really, but
Why don't you go then? I'm going to fix it.
Okay. So basically we could spend a whole hour talking about this. The effects of someone who experienced adverse childhood experiences, which are broken into household challenges, abuse, or neglect. So things like divorce, physical abuse, sexual abuse, different things like that, can not only shorten someone's lifespan, but can also have all of these really negative medical and physical and mental health outcomes. So individuals are more likely to become substance users, people are more likely to have liver disease, and all of those statistics up there. The biggest takeaway from this is that adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health crisis facing our nation today. And while COVID-19 is not on the list right here of, a traumatic event, it is being treated and looked under the lens of these significant events because it is impacting kids on such a deep level. So if you take COVID, and then on top of that, if you add divorce, instability, substance use, because we also know during this time adults are having a difficult time struggling too. So people are having mental health issues, people are having substance use issues, and this is happening in our very community. Or there's homelessness or incarceration, different things like that. And so these do have effects, and the more you experience, the more likely you are to have some of these negative effects. And this little triangle is really helpful because it kind of just goes to show what we were talking about in the beginning, is that you have that adverse childhood experience, and then your brain actually develops differently. And so then you have different learning outcomes potentially. Then you have different challenges. On top of that, you might have some physical health stuff going on, like liver disease or heart disease and things like that. And then ultimately could lead to an early onset of death. And so it's a pretty bummer of a slide. And if anybody's interested in learning more about it, it's the ACEs study from Kaiser Permanente from 1993 or 1996, I believe. And you can easily find it online if you want to read the study.
Thank you, Julie. So what does this mean for our children? Why is it important to understand ACEs? Because this can cause mental health challenges for anyone. It can cause what we call acute symptoms, so symptoms that develop immediately after, who may appear for people who have a pre-existing mental health challenges. So maybe they have already had an experience with anxiety or depression. These traumatic experiences can re-trigger those symptoms. We also keep in mind that there's a huge impact of parental stress. I know the world is asking a lot of parents right now, or caregivers, whatever your role is, to step up, like Julie was saying, and do everything that you need to do for your kids and also take care of yourself. We also see a lot more parental stress and children witnessing that. We're also seeing a lot more domestic violence happening in the home, or things like that happening. We also have a widening of the achievement gap for children living in poverty and children of color. It is the children of color who are really being left behind because they're not able to have as much access due to parents working out of the home or having to move or things like that. So we're starting to see that more and more. And the impact of trauma can be lifelong. So What does trauma look like? Our reactions to trauma varies. It depends on the person and really depends on the event and what is going on for us. You can have depression, anxiety. We see in our kids, we see more behavioral challenges. So that can be a defiance, opposition, refusal to log into Zoom, difficulty self-regulating, attachment issues, meaning separation anxiety, or we can see a regression or loss of skills that a child has already previously mastered, like bedwetting or being able to control their bladder. Attention issues, academic issues, somatic complaints is a really big one. I'm sure every parent here has experienced that, oh, my stomach hurts, I don't want to go to school. Or I have a headache, I don't want to go to school. Can you come pick me up? Feeding issues, hoarding behaviors. These are just a few. A lot of things, when you start really look into them, you can really trace it back to some form of traumatic event that occurred in that person's life. And just to clarify, a traumatic event doesn't have to be some big, car accident or a, loss of a parent or loved one. It can be anything from a parent's divorce. It could be moving, not being able to see your friends, not being able to go do your outdoor sports or activities that you enjoy. Trauma is how we perceive that event, if that makes sense.
And not coming to school, where for some kids, the only reason they come to school is to see that favorite teacher or to see that good friend. You remove that for them. And that's incredibly, incredibly hard on our students and our kids. It's hard for the adults too. I've heard a lot of adults say, I want to see the kids, right? Mm-hmm. And when all of that is gone, it's traumatizing for everybody.
Right. So these are just common behaviors observed. It's broken down based on age. So we have preschoolers, elementary school children, adolescents, and then we have the most frequently observed. I'm not going to go through every single thing, but a lot of them are common. The sleep disturbances, not being able to go to sleep or sleeping too much, being very irritable or aggressive. School avoidance is a big one. Withdrawing from friends and activities they used to find enjoyable, not wanting to go outside, increasing in agitation, eating disturbances, poor concentration, the physical complaints. Like, this is just a brief list, but the behaviors can go on and on and on. All right.
So we have common trauma triggers, which can be an unpredictability or a sudden change. So I'm in school on, Thursday, and then Friday is the last day that I get to see anybody for 9 months, right? That's an unpredictable and an incredibly sudden change. Transitions, loss of control, feeling vulnerable, lonely, or rejected, absence or loss of staff or peers, sensory overload, confrontation, praise, intimacy, and positive attention. Again, not knowing what everybody's individual trauma that they experienced in, it can be very different for each individual. And so common trigger responses. So for flight, you might see somebody like wanting to run, get out of there. So, fleeing class, we're talking about class, but that could also be like leaving your front door. My 15-year-old foster son, he would leave every day. He would just, bye, see ya. And I'd be like, why is there an Uber driver in my driveway? And he would just peace out. That was his way of coping. Skipping class, daydreaming, seeming to sleep, avoiding others, hiding, wandering, becoming discouraged easily, fight, as the word kind of alludes to, acting out, behaving aggressively. That can also be like posturing or threatening to. It doesn't have to be actually like hitting and becoming physical. Acting silly, exhibiting defiance, hyperactivity, arguing, screaming, and yelling. And then freeze is more of that, exhibiting that type of numbness, a refusal to get the needs met. Sometimes having like a blank look, like you're speaking to somebody and you have to be like, blink if you hear me, like, are you here with me? Right. Or feeling unable to move or act. And so Some individuals will be all flight or all fight or all freeze. Some of them will be all three. Some of it will change and alter depending on what is happening in that moment. But that's that part of that brain, that brainstem. These are the behaviors that happen. This is how individuals learn to survive, is to engage in all of this. Because if you look at what's on here, none of it says, stop, think, and breathe. That's not what fight, or freeze look like, right? It doesn't say, take a minute, count, draw, listen to some music, because that all requires an ability to be able to cope and be able to modulate your emotions and emotionally regulate. That is not survival brain. That is what is all that stuff is bye-bye, offline. And this is the part of the brainstem that's activated, is all of this stuff.
So what children learn during this school year won't be as important as whether they feel safe or not. I have stood on my soapbox at many meetings and not preached, but pleaded to teachers, let's just forget the academics. Let's just focus on getting our kids happy again and having them thrive and having them just be joyful and looking forward to being in this world and having a good time. So our children are going to be fine eventually, right? We will get there. What they learn isn't going to stop them from progressing forward in their academic careers. Everything that they have missed will be made up along the way. So everything is going to be okay. It's going to be a little bumpy, but we'll be there. So most kids are going to manage well because they have the support of their parents and other family members. There are some children who will have more risk factors because they have more intense reactions to anxiety, depression, suicidal behaviors. Some of those risk factors I mentioned before is a pre-existing mental health problem. So prior diagnoses of anxiety, depression, things like that. Prior traumatic experiences of abuse, family instability, loss of a loved one. Right now, what I've been seeing with the students I work with is that our students are really just withdrawing. They are locking themselves in their rooms. They're refusing to come out. They're refusing to log into Zoom. This is a common, and it's actually a normal response to being in a traumatic situation. What we want is there could be this time that some of our children with depression or depression symptoms, they don't have to have a diagnosis of depression to be depressed. There are going to be some difficulties adjusting to normal life when school resumes. I'm very grateful that we are starting kids coming back just to get them back into the routine of being on campus for 2 hours or however long it is, so they can learn how to be back on the campus and how to be back in the classroom. And we can just focus on that right now. So the most important thing I think everyone's wondering is, what can we do? Help them, love them, and listen is really the kind of core concepts right now. Humans are hardwired for connection and belonging. We want to have relationships. And with COVID, those relationships were severed. So that relationship with that teacher, the relationship with their parents, their peers. And what I often say is the people we are closest to are the ones we're going to push away first, because those are the people we are safest with. And those are the ones that we know we can be vulnerable with. And when our kids are pushing us away, it's a really clear indicator that they need us more. How we intervene is based on the child and how you have a relationship with them. And kids who have experienced trauma often push us away because that's kind of the relationship model they've been exposed to. So it's going to be a challenge to rebuild those things, but we can, because human beings, like I said, want relationships and we want social connections. Julie, are you there?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
These are all yours.
I know. Maintaining connections. So having a strong relationship with a trusted adult, it benefits is it really insulates anxious children from escalating. When we have those strong relationships, we can have stronger academics, stronger emotional and behavioral health. we can mitigate those adverse effects of trauma. Demonstrate caring language. So that's using, positive language, like, oh, I see you're having a really hard time right now. This is really hard for me too. Acknowledging and validating. Everyone has feelings, and everyone has the right to express their feelings, and everyone has the right to have their feelings heard. Sometimes it's hard as a parent to really take a step back from what we're doing and actually focus on what our kids are doing. One strategy I often give parents when we're having conversations about, my daughter or my son refuses to do their homework, or they're talking back to their teacher. Why are they doing this? And I always turn around, well, why don't you ask them? And I have so many parents go, I never thought about that. Because we're not in their minds. We can't think for them. We don't know why they're doing things. And if they're of the age, they're able to articulate that. A good little story I have is I was working with a elementary school kid, and the child, this is in a different, it's not the school setting, was afraid to take baths. And the mom was just, I don't know what to do. They won't take a shower. They won't take a bath. I don't know. And I asked that question, well, did you ask? And so she went and asked the child, and came back the next session and said, she says she's afraid of being sucked down the drain. That's a very logical and rational fear to have as a 4-year-old. And once we were able to identify that, then we're able to work on, oh, nothing's going to happen. This is why we have the drain stop. Like, nothing's going to happen when you go down. Nothing's going down the drain except for water and soap. So that goes into the listening. It's very important just to sit down and listen. Let your child yell and scream and talk about how terrible things are, and then validate. Yeah, I know. I hear it's really hard for you. Really, really hate not being able to see your friends. I feel the same way too. Like, I can't see my friends either. Like, what can we do together to make those social connections? Relationship building is of utmost importance during a pandemic in the future. Social connections are key, and feeling validated, heard, and loved is extremely important. So responding to anxiety, fear, and panic. Like I was just saying, validate the fears, reflect back what you heard before making suggestions. As parents, we are always quick to jump in and fix the problem. I'm asking you guys to take a step back and listen, and then mirror what your child's doing. I'm sorry you're so worried. This is really hard. Stay calm. When we're calm, we project energy that's calm towards our child and helps them actually calm themselves down. Be truthful. We don't want to be vague or minimize, because it actually will create more anxiety. But we also don't want to overshare as well. We need to give information that is age appropriate for our children. So kindergartners through 8th graders are going to have different explanations about what's going on and what we're going to share with them. Reframe negative comments. One of the things that we always say when we are in this space of anxiety and fear, we want to help our children see that they have control over that fear, because anxiety comes out of a sense of loss of control. So if we can regain a little bit of control, we can start overcoming that anxiety. My example I put is, I'll get sick and die. Okay, well, we're washing our hands, we're social distancing, we're taking steps to prevent that from happening. So you acknowledged it, you heard, you reframed it in a more positive manner without minimizing their feelings. This is also one of my favorite slides. When I was doing this presentation, I found this picture of Mr. Rogers. And the synopsis basically is, we look for the helpers in negative situations. It helps us shift our focus from always focusing on all the bad things that are happening and start focusing on the positive things. So focusing on, like, your teachers are doing their best to help you, or look at all those healthcare workers who are working so hard to make sure everyone's safe, and all the grocery store clerks who are working to make sure we have food, and everyone's doing their part to change that mindset, because we want to be more positive and not always just focus on that negative. Julie.
So avoiding that power struggle. We always want to try and empower our kids and try not to disempower them. Give them structured choices, reward the effort, and reinforce what you want to see happen. So throughout the day, there are choices that can be made all day. Do you want to sit here or do you want to sit there? Do you want to have this or do you want to have that? And giving one or two options, you're still in control of that situation. You're not letting the kid just kind of do whatever they want and make choices. You're providing two options that are viable for you as the parent and then letting them choose. So you don't want to say something that you actually don't want them to do. You want it to be two choices that they'll be able to do. And you can embed choices in everything. Do you want the blue chair? Or do you want the green chair? Do you want to go for a walk now? Or do you want to go for a walk in 10 minutes? Do you want to have bath time now? Or do you want to have bath in 10 minutes? And that is not, kids respond so well to feeling like they are in control, especially when the environment around them feels very much so out of control, which many kids are feeling at this moment because their routine, their norms, and everything are completely out of whack right now. That power struggle, when you have a kid who's doing any of those fight, flight, or freeze behaviors, it's not in the best interest for anybody to meet them where they're at. When you start doing this, the kid is now learning that, oh, so this is what I need to do. I need to keep fighting, right? And I'm going to keep going and going and going. And it's like survival of the most stubborn, right? Instead, the best thing to do is just be like, I see you're having a moment, I'm going to walk away. Because if you start engaging in that, then we're also modeling behavior that we don't want that child to exhibit, because we ourselves are getting frustrated, and then we're going up, and it becomes the whole thing, right? Rewarding the effort, and we're going to talk about this in a moment about setting realistic expectations. But even when we see kids, maybe the optimal outcome has not been achieved, but there's little steps in between that our kids have done. I remember I used to struggle so much with getting my kid to clean his room. It was like, oh my God, you thought that I would ask him. You thought I just asked him to like climb Mount Everest with no oxygen. And I would just go up to him and say, dude, just like fold two shirts. Right. And I would literally go, just fold two shirts, please. Just like try that. And he'd fold two shirts. She's like, is that all I have to do? And I was like, yeah. And then like maybe in 30 minutes, let's try and like put a pillowcase on your pillow, right? Like, and I broke it up into small little things. And then ultimately at the end of the day, his room did get cleaned, or the next day his room was cleaned, but I broke it up into small little steps for him and rewarded those efforts along the way. So it really is also about us letting go a little bit of like what we want that outcome to be, and it'll happen, it'll get there. And there's 1,000 different ways we can get there. And if we empower the child, if we give them those choices, if we break down the skill into smaller tasks, we're going to create more opportunities to positively reinforce. And over time, the more we positively praise, reward, and reinforce, we see the behavior we want to see go up, and the behavior that we don't want to see anymore go down, because they're not accessing that reinforcement.
When you're getting into those power struggles, going back to the reptile brain, when we are in those power struggles and our child's fighting against us, my only experience is with my 4-year-old, but when she's not wanting to follow through with what I've asked her to do, and she's starting to yell and scream and cry, there's no listening going on at that moment. And so me constantly coming in and telling her, well, I asked you to do this. You can't, go outside and play until you do this. Like, and she's screaming and yelling. She's not listening to me at all. My most important thing I've done is stop, tell her, hey, it seems like you're having a hard time with this. Let's just take a little break. Let's have a hug. Let's have some water. And then we'll come back and revisit this. Because no matter how much I'm pushing and I really want her to clean up, I'm not doing anything positive for her in that moment, except making her more upset and dysregulating her more. So as a parent, I have to take a step back, take in my own deep breath, and reconnect with my child in a calmer manner to help model that for her.
And that goes to those choices too, or any demand you give your child. My rule of thumb, and I used to do lots of parent training, right, in the homes. My rule of thumb was always like, say it once, give 8 to 10 seconds for them to respond, because in that 8 to 10 seconds or so, if I start going, come on, I told you to clean up your plate. I told you, come on, clean up your plate. What do you do? I am nagging them. And now I am nagging them. And that behavior is going to go escalated and they're going to get all mad. I'm creating a bigger issue. So if I say, clean up your plate, it's like an uncomfortable amount of time that you have to wait. And then, hey, I asked you to, clean up your plate, please. Waiting again. Do you need help cleaning up your plate? I can help you now, or you can do it in 5 minutes, right? Whatever it is. And then sometimes it's not even worth gaining that power struggle with them over the plate. And it's all about really picking your battles, right? And finding ways to get them to comply with other things aside from that one thing in that moment. And it's a balance and it's a juggling act. And we could talk about that as another topic we could talk about for hours, but truly picking your battle in that moment, and also like that nagging when you give that choice and that directive can really escalate things quite a bit. Unconditional positive regard. Carl Rogers is a humanist psychologist who talks, this is his jam. And I was not a believer in it because I'm a behaviorist for a very long time. But hey, it works. And the big takeaway with unconditional positive regard is always communicating respect, even if it's not returned, showing that kindness verbally and non-verbally, avoiding the sarcasm, and most importantly, not taking it personally. And so I have worked with really challenging students. I've had kids living in my home who were very, very challenging. And I had Post-it notes all over my house that said unconditional positive regard, because when I would get really mad and I would want to come into my room and like scream, or I would want to run away because I start going into fight, flight, or freeze mode, I have this Post-it note that said unconditional positive regard. And that would just remind me of like, okay, I cannot take it personally that this person just did this to me, or that they just said this to me. I can now remind myself that I love this person. This person means a lot to me, and I'm not going to stoop to that level of communicating in the same way that that person is. And so if I just need to step away from that for a couple of moments, then my next interaction with that person is, I love you, or I can see that this is hard and I'm here for you when you're ready. Not, why did you call me that? Or what did you do? Right. Because they're not listening. And I'm also not modeling the behavior that I want them to. And so, as corny as it sounds, that unconditional love that you can give to your child goes such a long way for them. We already kind of talked about this, having realistic expectations. So meet your kid where they're at. And that could happen every single day, could be a different pulse you have to have on the situation. Maybe, one day they're up on time, eating their breakfast, having their morning routine, and they're doing all that good stuff. And maybe on those days you can have expectations that are a little bit more. Maybe they have to do a chore, or they have to do something a little bit extra. If I go into the room and they are pulling covers over their head saying, no, 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 I don't want to do that, or I don't want to do Zoom today, or I don't want to do this thing today, I'm not going to have that same expectation on that day that I had on the day that they woke up all eager and they were able to access their day, right? And so the big thing with this is really finding ways to make sure we have achievable expectations for our kids. And that's going to always be us as the adults having to check ourselves and make sure that what we're asking of our kid, that they're going to actually be able to do in that moment. And so every day, sometimes it's just like a good little check-in, just like that check-in you need to have it yourself, having that check-in with your kid of like, how are they today? I noticed that they're a little bit sad, or they seem a little bit more worried, or they seem a little bit more agitated. On those days, we're going to have less expectations for them so that they're more successful, and that you're not getting into conflict as much with that child, because you're responding to what they're able to do in that moment.
This is also going to come into play too when we're all back into a more normal situation, meaning school starting at a regular time outside the home, parents may be going back into the office, and we're rushing out the door in the morning to get to point A to point B to point C, and everyone has to have their lunch and be at school on time. I go through this on a regular basis with my kids. Granted, I'm just working from home, but my kids do go to a daycare outside my home. And there's some mornings where my daughter is just taking her sweet time, and it drives me insane. And she starts going into well, I don't feel like going to school. I don't want to go to school. And so it's like, okay, that for me is a trigger. Like, okay, She's not feeling comfortable right now. Let me take a breath. Okay, let's put on our shoes together. Most days she can do it on her own, but sometimes she needs that little extra mom loving. Let's do everything together so that we can get going with our day.
Check assumptions, observe and question. So trying again, not to turn the small things into big things, and also trying to understand why is your child in that moment having that behavior? Are they doing it because they're trying to escape what you're asking them to do? Are they trying to get more attention from you in some way? Are they trying to access something that they really want in that moment? And I think once we understand the why of why they're engaging in a specific behavior, it then better informs what are we going to do. If they're trying to escape something in that moment or avoid something, we might need to make it a more comfortable situation for them, or we might need to make it more attainable and achievable for them. We might need to have them step away and take a break. Same thing with that attention, right? Like if they're looking for our attention, it's not always appropriate for your kids. I tell parents on Zoom all the time, I will be in a session and I will say, I'll text the mom, hey mom, he's not paying attention because you're right next to him and he keeps like throwing, paper airplanes in your face or whatever it might be. And I'm like, can you leave the room? Just leave the room. It's fine for you to leave the room, because that's not an appropriate way for that child to gain the attention of their parent in that moment, right? And we can go into more of these in a little bit. Beware of projecting your language and intention of the child's behavior. So again, we can assume all we want about why somebody is acting in a certain way, but the reality is we don't know. The only person who knows the why behind what they're doing is the person who is experiencing the behavior. So maybe not in that moment, if it's a student or if it's a child rather that is not really super good at communicating and is not really good at having that moment of like, let's talk feelings while they're agitated, but you can come back around and be like, hey, what was that about? How are you feeling in that moment? Instead of saying, are you this? Are you that? Or what are you feeling? When we start projecting our beliefs onto that child, it's not helping the situation either. And this is the second most important thing. So like the reptile brain and like the like all that brain slide is like my number one thing that I like people to remember from here. The number two thing for me is when in doubt, walk away and give time and space. It's called, we do a whole like crisis intervention training that I lead in the district. And it's a strategy called the wait strategy. And in some classrooms that I work in, I have just a little piece of paper that says wait, and it says, why am I talking? And I just point to the teachers and I say, you're getting in a power struggle with that kid right now. Just walk away. Use the wait strategy. And when it says, why am I talking? That is giving time and space. Sometimes that is the cure for all of our problems. It gets mom and dad, it gets y'all out of there. See ya. And it also gives the kid time to do whatever it is they're going to do, because in that moment, their brain's offline anyway, and they're not going to listen to anything that you're saying. So it really serves both parties really well. And that is not failing. That is not allowing a child to get away with something. That is you, and I do this for a living, and Megan is shaking her head yes too. It is clinically one of the greatest strategies you can do, because if you walk away, all of these other negative things that can come up from you engaging or talking or prompting too much or saying the wrong thing can make something that is such a small problem into we are at 150 on the scale, right? And so I empower you to walk away and to give time and space. You can still check in, set a timer. My go-to is I can see you're upset or you're having a minute. I'm going to come back and I'm going to check in with you in 10. And then I walk away, I put my earbuds in, I walk outside, I go in my room, I do what I need to do. And then in 10 minutes, I check in. And if I peek in and they're still kind of upset, I kind of decide, hey, is it time for me to say something? Or, right, I have to make that kind of executive decision in the moment. And if it's appropriate, I'll say, hey, I can see you're trying to calm down. Nice job. Or, hey, I can see this is still hard for you. I'll come back in another 10. And that's it. I'm not trying to problem solve in that moment. I'm acknowledging, I'm checking my assumption. I'm not projecting anything. I'm acknowledging, and I'm getting the heck out of there because I don't want things to escalate any further.
And it's also a valuable strategy for yourself if you have your child who's just really going at it, and for you to model for them, you know what? I actually really need a break right now. I'm going to go take a walk by myself. And so we're not looking at their behavior, we're focusing on ourselves. And that actually can break that negative interaction cycle going on. Because they're like, wait, what? Like, I thought you were going to get into it with me, but now you're leaving. And that can help end their own emotional projections happening. Okay, so we talked about this, like saying common acknowledge. These are just some tips. Looks like you need some time. Let me know when you're ready. Looks like you're having a rough morning. What can I do to help you? Again, not assuming we know, asking them for their input and buy-in. And remember, when we're working with anybody, if we can get them to participate, they're more likely to follow through and engage with what we want them to do. I always think it's really great to always thank somebody, like, thank you so much for telling me this. I didn't know. What can I do to help you? Or let me know when you're ready to rejoin us. I see you don't want to eat dinner with us right now. You want to go in your room? That's fine. Let me know when you want to come. Okay. Well, we'll be here waiting for you. Always leave that door open for them to come back. So disruptive and defiant behavior, it's often generated by unrecognized anxiety. And it could be anxiety that they may not even know they're experiencing, depending on their age. They may not be fully able to articulate like what's making them feel uncomfortable or nervous or scared, or they might not be really even fully recognizing that they're feeling this way. I said before, when kids are anxious, they can push us away, but we're those people who actually they need the most in that moment. So these are some interventions. We shared this with the teachers, but these are also things that are applicable at home. Mindfulness skills, which Julie touched upon in the beginning. Do daily check-ins. This is going to be something that you do in the morning. Like, hey, how are you feeling today? Or after school. I know everyone's favorite question is, what did you do at school today? And all the kids say, I don't know. I did nothing. Ask about something specific. What did you do at lunch? Who did you eat with? What did you do? What was your favorite part of that YouTube video you watched today? Model calming activities. So gratitude lists. I think this has become a new trend during Thanksgiving is we go around the table saying what we're grateful for. This is something that can be incorporated on a daily basis. Mental body scans, or when we're kind of going through and recognizing any tension we're feeling in our bodies. It's good to know, like for me, when I'm starting to get anxious or nervous, like I start like kind of like tearing my nails apart. And I'm like, oh, I must be feeling really anxious today because I've just destroyed like my manicure. Okay, that's good to know. We want to change the way we approach reluctant or unengaged children, remembering that they're not doing this on purpose. They're doing it to protect themselves, and they're kind of going through a survival mode and they don't know how to get their needs met in that moment. Make adjustments or accommodations. Like Julie was saying, I'm not going to expect you to clean up your entire room, but why don't you just focus on putting your shoes in the closet for me? Recognize success, no matter how small. And I'm talking no matter how small. And if it's just as simple of, thanks so much for thanking me for getting you food today. That was really nice. I really appreciated that. Communicate always in a calm manner and acknowledge. I know personally, if somebody's talking to me loudly and yelling at me, I'm not listening, and I'm not going to do what you're going to ask me to do. And it makes me disengage. We want to provide a safe space for children to ask questions and express their fears, meaning just letting your kids know that you're there for them. I mean, you guys are all great parents, and you love your kids and you want them to be successful and thriving. And we can focus on just rebuilding those connections where our kids are going to be really successful in life, no matter what they do. And providing age appropriate coping mechanisms. So it's going to be different based on the age of the child, right? A kindergartner coloring and drawing, 8th graders do that too, but I'm not going to expect a kindergartner to tell me, when you're angry, what can you do? Like for my own daughter, when Holden makes you mad, what can you do? I can come find mommy. Perfect. That is her coping mechanism. But tonight, apparently she hit her brother in the head with a drumstick, but we'll deal with that later. And my other job as a parent. This is just a small list. You guys will find when you start thinking more about it, you guys are already doing a lot of interventions on your own in your family. These are just some helpful hints and tips. All right. So we're almost at the end, just letting you guys know. What can you do to help manage your child's anxiety? This is kind of a new topic that's really becoming more prevalent throughout this past year. Our goal is not to eliminate the anxiety. Our goal is to learn how to manage anxiety. Ask your child how they're doing. One of my biggest pleas, don't avoid things just because they make your child anxious. When we avoid things that make us anxious, it only increases the likelihood that we're going to become more and more anxious and want to avoid that topic altogether. In therapy, it's called exposure therapy, meaning we gradually are exposing ourselves to something that makes us anxious to lessen that fear. We want to express positive and realistic expectations, respect their feelings, but we don't want to empower them. We don't want to go in and say, yeah, I totally agree. It's so scary. We shouldn't go to school anymore. Or asking leading questions. I've had this question said to many of students I've worked with throughout my years of, do you feel safe at school? By asking that question, we have input our fears into the child that school isn't a safe place. Instead of saying, tell me why don't you want to go to school? And it could be something completely random of, I don't want to change in the locker room. Oh, okay, well, we can help fix that. Instead of, I don't feel safe. And they're thinking now school is not a safe place. We want to encourage children to tolerate their anxiety. We can model that through how we experience our own anxiety. Sometimes I get nervous when I go to the dentist too. This is what I do to help calm myself down. Think things through with your child and make a plan. And that goes into our coping skills. So when you feel upset, what can you do? If you're feeling nervous, what can you do? I can color a picture. I can go hug my stuffed animal. I can talk to my friend. I can tell my mom. And we want to model ways of handling anxiety. So kids are really receptive to how we react to things. If we react in a heightened sense of fight or flight, and we're just constantly fleeing the room and not being able to address it, our kids are going to start doing the same things. But if we're able to say, you know what, that was scary for me, but I was able to get through it, we're modeling a positive way to handle anxiety. All right, so here are just some resources that we can share with you guys. These are some mindfulness strategies that we're using in the classroom. They also have, I put on 2 posters, one for elementary and one for middle school. And they're basically just feeling charts, and they're pictures of people saying sad, upset, or happy to kind of help if you need help communicating about feelings in home. Miss Julie, these are her favorites.
These are just some books about trauma that are really, really helpful. Not happy. The Body Keeps the Score is just a really good book on trauma. The Boy Who Was Raised a Dog. Amazing. The Deepest Well is all about ACEs. So if you want to dive into that a little bit more, it's by Dr. Nadine Harris, and she's our a Surgeon General of California. And then Fostering Resilient Learners. That's stuff for the classroom, but a lot of the stuff that we do in the classroom can also happen at home. And then there's a link to the Mental Health Services Administration with a specific thing regarding trauma that has a bunch of resources as well. Trigger warning, if you yourself have experienced trauma, these books are not light and fuzzy. They are very, very, very intense. So just a heads up, they're great, but you might have to read like 2 pages and then like scroll and look at puppies on your phone, and then, another 2 pages or something of the
Or
sort.
use your feeling charts from the previous page and identify how you're feeling.
Yeah.
And model coping strategies.
Yeah, I like to avoid that. So I look at puppies.
You're the yin to my yang, Julie. That's a sweet. Okay, and then last is just the references of where we got our information from. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. So that's the end of our presentation. It is being recorded. We can recording things. We can also do a summary. So I don't know how we want to communicate information. I know, I guess if you can go through Sarah Jolene at the district office.
Yeah, I'll probably let Sarah Jeline know to pass along these slides in a location that's accessible to everybody, as well as the recording, because I saw a couple of people were like, that was really good info and I didn't write it down, or that, I speak incredibly fast. I think Megan and I both kind of talk fast. So anything that we're recording all of this, so you'll have access to these slides in a little bit. I just don't know where they're going to land, so I'll reach out to Sarah Jeline about it, and we'll make sure that we get it to you guys.
And then I don't know if there'll be a survey, but if you guys have any feedback or if there's other topics that you guys are interested in or want more information on, whether that be behavioral support, more mental health, information, we are definitely more, I'm just volunteering, Julie, but we are definitely able to do more trainings if they are requested. So
yeah, we're definitely looking for ways to get this information out, not only to teachers and students and staff, but this is a community effort to get our kids back. This is a community effort to navigate these uncharted territories that there is no handbook for. We have good research and good data out there about all these other things that we can apply to the situation that we're all currently in. So please advocate as parents for your children and just parents in the community in the area, that if you would like more training, if you would like more support, we can definitely provide more of this stuff to you. So just advocate for that. And we'll, as I say in most of my IEP meetings, teamwork makes the dream work. And we are all, Megan's laughing. I say it just to make Megan mad. But truly, we're all kind of in this together. And, we're here to support not just your kids, but, the whole family. So let us know what we can do.
And you can also contact your principals at your child's schools, that if you have any questions or need more support. Just remember, I'm Megan Sarah, and this is Julie DeCoco. You just mentioned, I did this training. Can I get in contact with them, or can I get more information? And we all communicate together anyways. Jennifer Pietz, I will figure out a way to do with the recording. One of our tech people is actually on this Zoom with us. And so he shared it with me. I will figure out what to do with the recording once it's done recording and it's on my computer. So yes, we will get it to everyone some way. But thank you, everyone, for listening. This is one of my passions. I love working with kids and I love mental health. That's why I do what I do. And we are all here to, like Julie was saying, we're all in this together, and we will get through it, and we will be smiling and laughing and crying together when we're all back to some kind of normalcy.
Just promise us you'll put your own mask on first.
Yes, please.
Take care of yourselves.
Please. All right, I'm going to stop recording now. Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.